Morning. Let's take another few breaths together. Exhale first and take a deep breath in. And let it go. Let's take another deep breath together. Letting it go. One more breath together. Breathing in and letting go. And so good morning again. If you don't know me, I'm Reverend Elisha Christopher. I'm the spiritual director of the Center for Spiritual Living here in Santa Cruz. I do use they, them pronouns. My ancestors come to this country from all over the world, most specifically from Ireland, Scotland, Austria, and Holland, and some ancestors indigenous to the Americas as well. It's March. It's March 1st. It's like we're on the verge of spring, folks. Can you feel it?
Oh, yeah.
Can you feel it? It's spring is springing. And, as we've talked so far this year, our theme across Centers for Spiritual Living is open at the top. And last month, our theme was embracing the edge. We're getting close to that what's next, that evolutionary moment. And then this month, our theme is simply, what if? That's what happens when you go beyond the edge, right? And so what if, and I've been thinking about this a lot, that, one of the greatest questions that we can ask is what if, right? How much of the limitations we place on ourselves in our lives, or that are placed on us by the world, or that what we allow ourselves to dream or think is possible, stands at the edge of the willingness to ask that question, right? How much of our existence is just a perpetuation of what is? And I've always been a very curious creature. There's a funny story about when my aunts and uncles were moving from one part of Southern California to another, and my aunt volunteered to take me in her car, and I'm about 4 or 5. And it was an hour-and-a-half drive. And the story goes something like, by the time they got to Lancaster, where they were moving to, my aunt gets out of the car, I imagine her hair's frazzled and she big eyes, and she says, if I hear the question, why, one more time. Because the whole drive, everything I saw out the window, everything we passed, why are we moving? Why are we going there? There are so many questions. There's so much to know. So why became the question? And jokingly, in my family, that was my first word, was why. Because curiosity about life will open up all of the wonders of the world. Right, we had our opening chant this morning was the way knows the way, right? Are we willing to live as if there's something greater at work in the world, something greater at work in our lives, something greater moving through us? And are we willing to trust that there's something creating the way, there's something that's paving the path for us, there's something that's calling us forward? And the lure of it is placing those questions and those dreams and those desires in our minds, so that we ask those what-if questions, right? I remember there was a time in my life when I was living in Oregon, and I thought the questions, what if I moved to Santa Cruz? And a whole world opened up, right? Think about those moments in your life when perhaps you've come up against a what-if, and then you just leave it there. Do you have the courage, perhaps, to dream into the what if? Because it's real easy to just live in our lives and stay quite comfortable where we are, especially if we're comfortable where we are, and not ask those bigger questions. What if I were to step into my dream? What if I were to call in the relationship that I've been dreaming of? What if we could heal this fracture in society? What if we could bring about a world that works for everyone? Right? Are we willing to really lean into the dream and into the what if? And the other question of that is, what are we doing with those what ifs? What are we doing with that curiosity and that questioning? Because I also remember growing up, I remember that my mom would tell me she didn't think she had much of an imagination. But I grew up in the 90s, so I got to leave home without a cell phone, without anything, be like, come on when the street lights turn on. And then if I'm home late, my mom had quite the imagination. All of the what ifs started to run through her mind. What if they got hit by a car? What if something happened? What if, what if, what if, what if? And I'm curious, maybe we won't take an actual poll of raising our hands, but how many of us spend more of our what if time in the dreaming of the negative outcomes, of dreaming of what we don't want to experience, right? I'm sure that with all that's happening in our nation, with all that's happening in our government, with all that's happening in the world, I'm sure a great number of what-ifs move through all of our minds. But does it take us to a place of dreaming into possibility, of what it is we are actually wanting to see, of what is deeply drawing us forward into life? What are we doing with that creative potential? How much of our rumination is really on what we want to experience and how we want to get there and what possible doors could open up if we move in that direction? How many of us can truly say we spend most of our imaginative time dreaming about the things that we wish could truly be? Where are the rest of the hands, people? Right? So this is the thing, right? This is where our spiritual work is. Right? It's to tune our minds to that higher place of working with our imagination as the greatest tool that the universe has given us to dream into what's possible, to dream into what it is that we want to create. I don't know if this is true, but I read something interesting recently about all of the scientists who've worked with the great apes, learning to sign and have conversations back and forth with the gorillas and chimpanzees. And I read in an article recently that in all of the conversations, never did any of the scientists get a question. That the apes were able, the chimpanzees and the gorillas are able to talk about facts, to talk about what they're feeling, to talk about what is. But they're saying perhaps that one thing that makes us human, the one thing that causes us to rise out of that animal consciousness is our capacity to ask questions. Is our capacity to think about what isn't and dream about how it could be. Right? It's also the curse of being human because we're capable of noticing what isn't and dreaming about what could be, which also can take us out of the present moment. Interesting, right? So there's a blessing and a curse here, which is our gift of curiosity, which is our ability to ask questions, to ask why, to ask what could be, and then to dream of what has not yet been. And think about the journey of humanity over the last, we'll call it 300,000 years, has been about dreaming things into existence that did not exist before. That's what our species has done the entire time we've been here. We have invented, we have brought forth, we have created. And so what if the capacity that is moving through us truly is the creative capacity of the universe, the same power that has created worlds, that has evolved all things for all time? That innate drive is expressing itself consciously through humanity, through each one of us. And so one of the things I want to invite us into this month is to be in the what if of the spiritual practice. To think about what are the things that you hear, perhaps from this stage, when I say God is all there is. When I say there's one life that's living and breathing through each and every person on this planet, no exceptions. That God is the activity of every interaction on this planet. Maybe you're not fully 100% there with me, like, yep, I fully get that, but what if? What if there is only one consciousness? What if there is only one of us here? What if that thing that I call I, when I point inward, is the same thing that you're pointing to, is the same thing that every government leader on the planet, to every citizen of every nation, to every living being is pointing back to that one I? We all call it the same name, I am. What if? Maybe you're not 100% there believing that every person is God looking back at you, but what if you did? What would it look like if you walked through the world each and every day looking for God looking back at you through the eyes of every person you met? Would it change how you show up? Would it change how you be? Would it change how you interact? So the question is to remain in the question. Right? The Zen practitioners, Zen Buddhists, give this practice of the koan, right? Which is asking an unanswerable question. What is the sound of one hand clapping? You know? But it gets your mind into the question. And, you know, one of the great capacities of being human is we have language. We're able to name things. We're able to point them out. We're able to say, that's what is. But then we need to move beyond that and ask what could be. And then realize that we have the agency, we have the capacity to bring about creation, to be the activity of evolution, right? We get to be that thing that bends the arc of the universe towards justice. We get to be the energy that brings about more love and compassion in the world, right? Think about this. The powers of the universe that have created worlds, that are shining the sun and growing the grass, that intelligence that's in every seed, that the moment it hits soil and water, something awakes and sparks into existence, that same power has the capacity to move through each one of our minds, our words, our choices, and our actions. What if you and I truly are God itself? Here in this world, awakening to the truth of reality and bringing about the powers of creation through our choices. What if? So think about this idea that where we place our attention is the way that we direct the consciousness of the universe. What if your choices ripple out throughout the entirety of the world? What if every breath that we breathe is shared between all of us? So take a breath and breathe that for a minute. Take a moment to just breathe. You know, I say these words each time we go into prayer that I'm being breathed by something greater than myself. Take a moment and really quietly be still and breathe. And feel the breath moving in and moving out. And let this question ripple through the mind. What if there is something greater than myself that is breathing this body? And what if that something greater is breathing each body in this room? And what if there's only one of us here? There's something greater at work, but we have the capacity to direct it, to control it, to give it form. Because we can consciously breathe in, and breathe out. We can do it on purpose. Breathe in and breathe out. And then we can just allow it to be, and it will keep happening. Right? So Spirit is always moving through us in every moment of our life and everything we do, just like the breath. But at any point, we can choose to harness that power, to direct that power, to choose to be the conscious agent that is moving it on purpose. That we can direct the Spirit of the living God into creation. That we are the driving force of evolution itself. We are the universe waking up. And what if each one of us woke up a little bit more today to the greater truth about who we are and the nature of the universe in which we live? So let's breathe a little deeper. And as we breathe, as we feel that energy rising and falling, as we feel it breathing us, let us remember together that there is one seamless presence that is living and breathing throughout the entirety of the universe. That this one life, this one being, this one presence, this energy, by whatever name we might give it, it is the great source of all being. And so let us know that this infinite power is coursing through each one of us. That through our choices, through our actions, through our intention, through our attention, we direct this great cosmic force. That each one of us are agents of possibility. That we have this remarkable capacity of divine mind moving through these beautiful human brains. And that wherever we direct that divinity, wherever we direct that attention, we have the capacity to bring forth creation, to bring forth something new, to ask those greater questions about what is possible. What if love truly was the greatest force in the world? What if peace is possible? What if everything necessary for the global awakening of humanity is being handed to us right now? What if we are moving through a moment of awakening? What if everything that is happening on the world that looks unlike it is rising up so that it can be healed? What if everything that we see that we don't like gives us the contrast so that we know ever more clearly what it is that we do like, what we do want, and what is good and right and true? What if everything is part of the great cause and effect nature of the universe, and we are the choosing agents within that? What if we walked out of these doors today, each one of us knowing that we are the divine life itself? And what if we began to walk through the world looking for that truth, looking back at us through everyone we meet? What if? And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the ability to ask questions. I'm grateful for the ability to dream into what could be. I'm grateful for the ability to see what is and then to dream of the more. Because I know that the more of us is always calling us. That the unseen is always seeking to be made visible. That we have the capacity to bring about that which has never been before. And so I'm grateful for this beloved community, for this space that allows us to do this practice together, for all the ways that we are connected, for the more of us that continues to emerge. I'm grateful. And so let us again surrender to that breath, to that something more that is breathing us. To truly feel ourselves being breathed, to feel that power beating our hearts, and to know that at any moment we can choose to direct this power that is always available, always moving through us. So let us live in the invitation of what is possible. What if? And so it is.